we were chatting earlier about the somewhat infamous CRC study that, you know, said that well, I'm not going to say it said that, but it has been portrayed on Capitol Hill that if you put E15 in a car, it's going to spontaneously explode or some such thing and at least stop working. And just wondering your thoughts on that test, how they got the cars they tested, the new test they created, and even their definition of a failure in that test. Is it a failure? You know way more about engines than probably anyone else in this room, so if you can comment on that, I'd sure appreciate it.
I'm very familiar with that test, and actually the fellow who orchestrated it from FEV, Henning Kleberg, is a friend of mine. So I won't say too many bad things about it because he and I get along well, but I will tell you that the vehicles that were selected and the test process that was defined for that test were intended to try to make everything fail. This was not a standard industry test process for accruing miles on engines. It's not representative of how anyone would drive a car, and indeed the engines that were selected were engines that were prone to failure in that kind of testing. E10 has been on the market for a long time, and there's obviously hundreds of millions of vehicles out there that have accrued trillions of miles on E10. Yet the baseline for the test was not E10. None of the engines in the test were run on E10. They were all run on gasoline, and some of them didn't even live through the gasoline part. And then they ran them in E15 and declared they had a higher failure rate. Failure being defined as not standing on the side of the road with smoke coming from under your hood or your engine looking like the one in the video I showed you. Failure was based on an arbitrary definition of a cylinder leakage parameter, which is something we use often, where you pressurize an engine, say they're static, and you measure how quick you have leakage of the gas that you use to pressurize it around the valves and around the piston rings. What they defined as a failed engine is something that probably the vast majority of people in the room here wouldn't even realize that you're driving around your car, you had an engine in it that was defined as failed. It was a very tight specification on what we call a blow-by, which is a leakage spec, that isn't unusual at all for cars that accrue the kind of mileage and the duration of those tests. So certainly I would not want to read anything into those tests implying that E15 is going to be doomsday in any way for engines in any of your cars. So does that answer your question?
Well, I appreciate your insight on it.